Welcome to Finance with Factor,
Oops, apparently we're already recording, so here we go.
a place you can come to laugh and learn from local experts who love to discuss everything related to the world of real estate.
Weird passion. It's one that I actually share a little bit, so it makes me a weirdo with you.
Each week, we'll cover a unique topic
Let's talk about condos.
to help you understand the mortgage industry, navigate the home buying process, and grow your business while maintaining a slice of sanity.
Okay, fine. I've been confused by a lot of things over the past few years.
Now that he's climbed safely atop his soapbox, here's your host, a senior loan officer with Movement Mortgage, Jason Factor.
So tell me a little bit about the Boston Debate Club and how you got involved.
Yes. So the Boston Debate League, we are an almost 20-year-old nonprofit based in Boston. And our vision is that all young people in Boston are engaged in critical discourse, informed by evidence, and empowered to lead. And so it includes things like a debate club, like what you were talking about, but we really, we have 3 programs that work towards that vision. So we have a program that is probably what people think about when they think of debate, a competitive, we do the type of debate called policy debate. So it's working with about 40 schools and partners, middle and high schools across the city of Boston, Somerville, Chelsea, Everett. And we support them in having debate teams. And then we host these big citywide tournaments where they come together and compete. And also we hold a summer camp as well. And then we have a program that is involving bringing debate-inspired approaches into the classroom. So that's principally working with teachers across all content area, as well as school leaders, partnering with individual teachers and schools to do that work. And then we have a third program, our newest one, called Resolved, engages Black and Latino boys and young men in using the tools of debate to analyze issues in their community. So that's the organization. And I got involved 12 years ago, and I had no background in debate. My high school did not have a debate team. I had done some things that felt debate adjacent, like theater. And I had done most recently civic engagement work, civic leadership work with high school students. There's some comparable qualities. My background is as a teacher, and then
I hate to
working
bring it
with.
to you, but if your background is a teacher, you're very well skilled in the talents of debate.
Yes, I had actually brought debate into my classroom somewhat, but yes, very, very much.
Yeah, if you're a teacher, a parent, like any of those types of roles, I hate to break it to you, but debate is kind of your daily existence.
Yes, I have a 14-year-old now, so yes, very much. And she is skilled in the art of debate.
That's unfortunate for you. I'm sorry.
No, well, we'll take it. On the whole, I'll take it. So anyway, that's how I got in. I just learned about the opportunity, and it was less about debate, but when I was meeting, like debate itself as an activity, but when I was meeting through the interview process, members of the Boston Debate League community, students, teachers and educators, debate coaches, and then the staff, I was so inspired by the level of engagement, the sense of community, the sense of, I say sometimes about this community that there's criticality without cynicism. It's a very earnest group, as well as one that's not Pollyannish. So anyway, that's what brought me in, even though I did not have a debate background.
That little point right there, and we're going to get into, so I'm going to break down a few sessions with people from the Boston Debate League and various clubs within it and subsections of it, because I had the opportunity to meet some of the leaders of the group, and I think it's really cool. I love debate. You can just ask my children, parents, wife. I probably like it too much. It's just the way that I critically think through
things. Did you debate yourself?
Well, it's just like my way of processing information is auditory. So and then I verbalize it. So I have to hear it. I have to argue against it. Even if I agree with you, I'm probably going to play counterpoint for just a moment or two. I think it is a byproduct of growing up with a prosecutor and a career attorney. So I blame
Uh-huh.
my mom, like any good child. I blame my mom for all of those problems that I developed in adulthood. But but
Wonderful.
today, that is the debate league and what it is. Marissa, perhaps you should introduce yourself because we're going to talk about point two, which is uh, where you come in, I think, in terms of developing curriculum that is specific and engaging within those classroom settings. And I think that's wildly important right now as realtors, mortgage lenders, attorneys start thinking through like, how do I engage people in events over the summer? How do I bring content that is engaging and build out a classroom that is, um, I mean, summer school is brutal enough. So, like, how do I keep the content and what we're talking about engaging enough to actually keep people here and interested for the 15 to 30 minutes that we're going to deliver content before we serve them beverages and food? Um, so, before we get into that stuff, Marissa, like, you explain the league a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Marisa Suescun. My role is managing director of programs at the Boston Debate League, and um, I can share. Professionally, my background has been education, though also a little bit of freelance journalism here and there, which I also think the aspects of interviewing and researching connect with debate as well. But I started my career teaching elementary school in New York City, where I spent the first decade of my adult life, a city I love. And I worked with young people in, again, civic leadership and civic engagement work. I ended up in kind of the education nonprofit world at that point. Um, then when upon moving to Boston, when my husband and I had our daughter, and I grew up in the Boston area, so we both had family in this area. So we moved to Boston, um, which I had never actually lived in Boston itself, and had never forged a professional life here. So it did feel like starting anew in a certain
Hmm.
way. Um, and I ended up working for an organization called Teach Plus, which does both policy work and teacher like retention work. So they had a teacher leadership program that grew out of their policy fellows program. So I did some work with that on the district end, um, and then came to the Boston Debate League. So I've been with the Boston Debate League for about 12 years. I think a through line for my professional work is that it's about teaching and learning, but also always about building community and relationships. And I think as we transition into what you want to talk about, I think that is a bedrock um, of an approach I take, and that at the Boston Debate League we take around learning communities.
Well, and I noticed a few times you've mentioned uh, the theme here of almost like collaboration, community, and
Yes.
you mentioned it was something that you were truly struck by of the, I guess, respectful level of conversation and debate that people were having when you audited the very first time, I guess. Um,
Yes.
how does that tie into not just? I mean, obviously, we know that's an important part of debate, though you don't always see it in today's civilization. Um, but it is technically an important part of negotiations and debate and argument. Um, how does that tie into the classroom setting?
Yes. I think sometimes we talk about um, the work of building classrooms that, and actually any of the work we do is that relationship is the bedrock, or the relationship is the work. So building relationships of trust and care and investment is a prerequisite for any learning of any meaning and value and depth, and also any risk taking, which debate requires. And I kind of I have this image of like a play a play box, like a
Mhm.
sandbox. Um, and I think I used to think the stronger the relationships, the bigger the sandbox that you can play in, which is to say, like, there's areas of common ground that we know are safe, that we travel and traverse in. And then as we get to know someone, we might put a foot into another and see, is it safe for me to say this, even if they agree or disagree? Can we talk about this? Oh, we can talk about this and still be in relationship and respect each other and be included and belong. So I think the bigger the group, the more work you have to do to build relationship, and also the more contentious, um, deeply felt um, the topic, the more one has to invest in community building and relationship for there to be conversation that can ultimately lead to learning. But which is to say, where there can be listening, there can be curiosity, there can be bringing in evidence-based discourse um, in a way that people can stay open. Um,
Sure.
so
Something as simple as like math for a mortgage is much less emotionally charged than, other topics that you might want to cover in a various classroom. Um, and I guess in a big setting, so you mentioned the classroom setting, like building that relationship. How does that change from, say, a semester long course versus a one time event where you've got a very short runway to help build those relationships? How do you work with your teachers to, or your instructors to help them build that relationship quickly, especially
yeah,
when you got a big diverse group of people in front of you?
that's a great question. And I mean, when you were talking about the math for investing, I'm thinking also as it relates to maybe your field. I'm curious, or your listeners. Like there probably are different kinds of settings, and sometimes it's just you have 2 hours with a group, and sometimes you have a day, and sometimes you maybe have a series of where you can build over time. And I do think that the content needs to match the format and the duration. So perhaps what might be most relevant in terms of the Boston Debate League is we also work with educators as their own learning communities, and that's maybe most comparable to thinking about working with people, in the investment industry or real estate, that bring in, first of all, they're adult learners. Secondly, they bring in deep wells of expertise, knowledge, experiences, um, potentially diverse experiences, and then viewpoints, beliefs, values. And so, um, with any learning community, this is true with younger people as well, and we seek to build that. But with adult learners, it is like in the research that adult learners learn from building on and accessing their existing expertise and knowledge. That's something that's critical to the theory of adult learning. And so, um, a common, I think, approach that can flop when doing in the educational world, we call it PD, professional development, but maybe in the real estate, it's something professional. Maybe it's professional development. It's called as well. Um, can be this idea of like the sage and the stage. The person who's leading, facilitating, is the holder of information, and then everyone else receives. And I do think the person leading has to have some specialized information that is of value, timely, urgent, and is going to help the people. But the biggest piece that we do is seek to build relationship always and have people activate, share, collaborate around the information, expertise, and knowledge they each hold, and that it can help build collective learning around common um, or either common or sort of urgent kind of issues that
Hmm.
people actually grapple with. And so, to your question about time, if it's a 2 hour session, we're not going to get into anti-racism in the classroom. It's 2 hours, and but we are still going to get into some things that may relate to that. But we're not going to like try to approach something that requires a level of um, trust and care and willingness to be in places of discomfort or vulnerability in 2 hours. Like that would be an irresponsible like design. Comes up, that's a different thing. If it comes up organically, we bring it in. But if it's something where we have time, like in the Boston Debate League, we've had, um, for example, week-long graduate courses where we're with a group Monday through Friday. It's only 5 days, but it's a very intense and closed experience, so we can go to deeper waters. Or we have a group of fellows that are teachers who have been working with us for a long time, and it's a year-long engagement, and it's once a month, but it's year-long, and so again, we can go to different waters and build community in that way.
Yep.
Versus if we're meeting a faculty at a school for the first time after school, exhausted on a Friday, we're gonna honor what that is.
And that's the
Um,
boat that we're usually in.
you're in that boat, yeah.
um,
Yeah, I will say one of the things, and I'm curious to what extent this might relate to, um, to real estate and people in the investment world. But one of the things we'd like to do with any learners right off the bat is get people debating, get people doing the thing, laughing, connecting over questions that can build relationship in organic ways, but also not feel scary to start, right? But once people start laughing, the effective filter opens. Lots of stuff can happen. So
that
we
is
get
my
in
life
right.
principle.
Yes. um, and we have people learn by doing. So even if it's worth a group of teachers over the course of the session, they're going to engage as learners, like in a thing. Maybe it's math teachers, so we're going to do something around algebra with debate, like if eighth grade or whatever, and then step back and debrief with their professional hats on. And so I'm curious to what extent that relates to your experiences um, with professional development in your field, if that's the kind of thing that has happened or can happen.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, I'm presenting to a group of realtors later this month about making competitive offers. And there's going to be a panel, and I'll be introducing the panelists. I'm not necessarily on the panel, but I will be speaking to the group about making competitive offers. Doesn't sound like there's a lot of debate there, right? But sharing stories and making it an engaging conversation that isn't just a bunch of panelists word vomiting at a group of realtors, I think becomes really important. And so as I think through how we want to set up the panel and have the debate, I guess, um, kind of drawing on what you're saying here in terms of like getting them active and sharing those stories and sharing stories yourself becomes more memorable um, when having that conversation. And again, that doesn't sound like you mentioned algebra, right? Like, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of debate to happen in teaching algebra, but there can be, right? There doesn't sound like making an offer, sending an email to a realtor and saying, please accept my client's offer shouldn't be a huge debate, but it can because the way that we set it up can, and the structure of it can differ. Um, and so that's kind of the conversation that we'll be having later this month. And then setting up the work, I go into realtors offices and do workshops and presentations. And this is actually one of the topics that we present is making competitive offers. So like getting them engaged in that process is always one of the big challenges that I have because to your point, they're realtors. I'm not. What do I know
Hmm.
about making competitive offers better than them? So I always hesitate to set myself up as like, I'm here to teach you about this thing that you hopefully already know. And I think that's a challenge that I always struggle with as the professional development instructor in these situations. So I'd be curious what your advice is on that and how to kind of set up those initial conversations of like, I'm an expert in my own field, you're the expert in your field, but we're here to collaborate on how to make this process better. I'd be curious what your advice is when you set those workshops up for your teachers.
Yes, and similarly, though I taught once upon a time, I am no. Once you're not in the thing, you're no longer. So I similarly experience of I don't know that best, but my role is also not that, but it is to facilitate learning, which it sounds like your role is as well, which includes the sharing of expertise in the room, and that can be a gift, I think, to the professionals that you work with. I'm curious. I have a couple questions.
Please.
So, what is a competitive offer?
So it depends, right? So there are a bunch of clauses and things in there, but for me and my standpoint, what can help make the offer competitive is the collaboration between the team. The terms of the offer are the terms of the offer. In the end, the most competitive offer is the highest price point with the best terms. But
Yes.
when you come down to tiebreakers, a lot of times it's simple things like um, how quickly are we closing it? It can be something as simple as the realtor that submits the offer copying me on it so that I can proactively follow up, making sure that our attorney is already in the loop and that things are well organized. The follow up work that I do afterwards to speak with the listing agent and walk through the details. And again, like to me, what makes it more competitive is that we walk through all the details of the offer proactively, and we're able to say like, yeah, we ran it with today's rates, estimated insurance figures, your published taxes. We Here's why we're structuring the financing the way we do. So I think what makes it more competitive, if I had to drill it down, is that it's not just like, here's what we're doing, but here's why we're doing it. And I think that gets back to the nature of debate in itself, is it's not
Mhm.
just like, here's what I'm arguing. It has to get down to the why at some point.
Yes. And it sounds like getting to the why requires a group of people who are wearing different hats, because you mentioned the collaboration as well
Yeah.
to get to that. In terms of who's coming, like in this upcoming session that you're leading, is it just real estate agents, or is it people across different roles that would be in
This
the
is
room?
the Greater Boston Association of Realtors and their young professional network for the most part. So it's
Okay.
going to be people from 0 years of experience to probably like 10 years of experience.
Okay.
And some of them are going to be wildly successful top agents, and some are going to be like, I'm just here to learn something. I'm starting from
Mhm.
scratch.
That's awesome. Um, and they'll all have something to give, right? I mean, there'll be different levels of
Yeah.
experience in the room. Even for someone who's new, there's a gift to the openness of the perspective, or maybe bringing perspectives from other
Sure.
industries, which can be exciting. Um,
Sometimes failure is
so
the
one of
best advice you
okay,
can give.
what was that?
Sometimes a naive failure is the best advice you can give.
Yes, to learn from. Yes. So one of the things I might invite you to think about is, even before the panel begins, and maybe the panelists can be before they are on the panel in the mix, with the other participants. Um, you might set up some sort of scenario, um, and have them work in groups, comparable size teams to what an actual group of people would be working on such a thing, and develop a competitive offer. Have people share those out. They could make an argument about why this is the most competitive offer. Really, a competitive offer is an argument.
Sure.
You're making a claim that this is what the um, the price should be, and here are the evidence and the reasoning for to support that. Um, and then you could debrief. Before going into the panel, you could debrief. Well, what did we learn? What were some compelling, what was the process like working with people? What was something that was surprising that you heard from another group that your group hadn't thought about? Um, how would this have been different if XYZ, like whatever the scenarios are that kind of typically make things different.
So I'm wildly
Um,
impressed that on a fly, with no background knowledge of the topic, you just came up with an entire workshop. Um, how do you do that? Like mentally, what steps did you go through to create that curriculum so quickly and on the fly without the subject matter expertise? Because that's essentially what we're doing when we go into a realtor's office. We have
mm,
subject matter expertise, but we're trying to come up with a small curriculum, a workshop that's engaging. And the fact that
mhm.
you just did that so quickly was wildly impressive.
Thank you. Um, well, this is the act of coaching, actually. So one of the things we do in the education, we call it debate inspired classrooms, is the program that works around classrooms and teachers and schools. Um, and the bread and butter of that is working one on one with the teacher and the Boston Debate League person. The expertise they bring is around some debate practices, but really it is. Um, Learning from the expertise of the teacher, and then providing and asking questions and building relationship, and then providing some ideas based on some bank of knowledge that we have. So one of the things that I was first of all, you named competitive offer, and I thought, okay, that's a key concept. I have a general sense of what that might mean, but I was curious. And you shared it, and then when we shared it, things were coming up, that you were sharing about, um, one, almost the competitive offer is like a debatable term, how you
Hmm.
would define it, but that the how, um, and the why just felt critical to you. And so then I was thinking about how to, um, provide space for the learners who are also experts in the room to access and grapple with that more deeply in a way that they couldn't through just watching a webinar or reading a book. Like there's something different about being in a space where you're collaborating and leading and learning from each other. So, um, some principles I drew upon was I told you before that when we gather any learning community, we want to build community. So that's what also a an opening activator where you're in small groups. That's also about building community because now at least you're meeting a few people, but you're meeting them through the language of your shared professional language, which is a nice way to ease in. Um, and then actively doing a thing, activating your expertise, and then debriefing and reflecting on it. And then what can I take to apply it to my actual situation in my own work? Um, so, and I was thinking about what a panel does and doesn't do, because panels are wonderful. And and what they're wonderful about is it's almost like listening in on a conversation with people who have great expertise, and ideally they're building on each other, right?
Well, and sometimes
Uh,
different perspectives. So even on the panel, sometimes you'll engage in some debate.
yes, exactly. So that would be awesome. Even for the panel, I mean, you might there are ways to make the panel more or less interactive with those who are sort of in the audience, so to speak. But even if it's a more straightforward panel, if the panelists had been part of the prior, chances are they're going to bring that into their responses
Mhm.
later. And now we've had a shared experience. So, oh, when they make this connection to their own expertise to something that we all just shared, now it also lands more deeply as well. Um, the room will be warm. I think about when you walk in and it's like, you try to go around and meet people and say hello and it's like one-on-one things and then you start the thing and maybe there's already a relationship that some people have with each other or not. I don't know if this is the kind of community where, chances are some people will already know each other if they're in the room together or it'll be brand new.
We'll
But
all
either
know each
way,
other, but as competitors, right?
oh,
Like
oh,
in
that's
many
something.
respects. But like summer school is hard enough. It's a the level of engagement. I mean, thankfully people are here, but this is a free event. So people are here
Yeah.
because they want to learn by elective, but they're also here because, there's free cocktails or whatever. So
Yes.
it's hard to say what the level of engagement in the room always is. But what I appreciate about what you're sharing is um, warming the room up with activity as opposed to starting off with, "Hi, my name's Jason Factor, and here's three other
Mhm.
people," and you've already lost the room before
Mhm.
before you get halfway through the introductions, because someone in the back of the room is thinking, "I know more than that guy. I do more volume than that guy," or "I'm
Yeah, I'm
a
gonna do
better
my
agent
work
than
email
her.
or
Why
whatever.
why do I care
Yes.
what she has to
Mhm.
say? I beat her out last time anyways." Um, so I think I like what you're
That's a good
doing where you're starting with such a warm and engaging activity, and then you're introducing people and bringing them into that shared experience.
that is and what you're sharing, about people know each other, but they're competitors. I'm curious, like, what kind of the collegial atmosphere is like amongst then
It's always
that
fun.
community?
It's collegial. I mean, like, you do need each other, right? It is one of these
Yeah,
things
yeah.
where it's like you want to have good relationships with other agents. Even as a lender, I want to have good relationships with other lenders. Um,
Uh-huh.
Less important than agents, I suppose. But you know, you I'll show you an example. We had when we talked about competitive offers, um, we had one the other day where the agent submitted the offer. It was a competitive offer. We did the follow up work, and the agent had a good experience working with that agent and even our team in the past, and that becomes the tiebreaker when you're looking at, here's three offers that all look very similar, but I know this person is going to be is going to be easy to work with. I know this person is going to get it to the closing line. I know this person is representing their client with integrity and honesty, or, I
Yes.
have that it can't be I have a relationship, because obviously, to be clear, the seller always picks the winning offer, not the agent, the listing agent. But
Right.
how it's presented can be important. And so
Yes.
being able to say, like, I've had multiple closings with this person. This person works in my office, and they always seem to be a top agent. They know what they're doing versus, I don't know this person. They're not local to our market, I don't know how familiar they are with this property. Like those types of tiebreakers become important in creating
Right.
competitive offers. So yeah, I mean, the
Right.
atmosphere in the room will be friendly.
Yes. Well, that's really first of all, it's just interesting to learn the nuances. This is not a I mean, I had an experience when we bought our house, our condo. So I got like a little glimpse from the buyer perspective, but I don't know this world at all. So thank you for sharing about it. One of the things that's making me that what you're saying is making me think about is the nature of like competitive offer. There's competition actually throughout the whole process,
Mhm.
but the competition does not have to be
It
um
switches though, right? Because like,
cost.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and this is what I always tell buyers is that the competition and the negotiations and the debate, they all change because at first there's so many layers of debate in this process. Because at first you're debating like, and you know this, should I even make an offer on this house? Right. So if you're the home buyer, it starts with the debate on the actual property where you're picking apart the property that you're dating on the open house and saying, do I
Yes.
marry it? And then
Uh-huh.
once you've done that, you're often debating like what program, what type of loan, what rate, like how am I financing this? What are we putting together as an offer? And you're going through that whole debate with yourself, right? And then you actually make the offer. Now you're fighting with all the other offers that are in on that property, and you have to make the argument that yours is the best offer. Once you've got all that accepted, the weird part is that you go from combatants where you've got a listing agent and a seller and a buyer and a real and a buyer's agent to now we're all going to try to work together and get this to a finish line because we're all
That's
after
our
the same
shared goal.
outcome, which is you buy the house that I want to sell. And that becomes a
Mm.
full different debate. It's like, how do we get this? How do we come together and get this done?
That's fascinating. So this reminds me a little bit of the dynamic in a debate tournament because there's competition and in the Boston Debate League we try to privilege um learning above all and learning a community, but also honor excellence. So the competition has to be there.
Hmm.
um and so what you're describing, but then also in a way that you can debate fiercely and then for with people from other schools, but then also be genuinely friends or rooting together when you're going from the Boston Debate League internal tournaments to go off and represent the BDL nationally. Now, similar to that transition point, now we're all towards the same goal. Um, it seems like acting with integrity at all moments is crucial, such that that end goal can work the way it does. So that's pretty like moving to think about that. And what I wonder about and this is where like the bigger the amount of time and the bigger the relationship, the bigger the sandbox that you can set, right? But I wonder about exploring the dynamics of the competitive collaborative space, like with the people in the room. um there could be an in the example that we were talking about, there could be an element of competition to the opening activity where there's a group that's voting on, or we actually have an activity in um, the debate inspired classrooms called class challenge, but basically groups of people develop an argument and then they present, there's a rubric and everyone needs to vote, but you can't vote for your own group. So but as a group you need to vote for which was the in this case which was the best competitive offer
Yeah.
as defined by XYZ, and here's why. And now there's an element of actual competition to it, not the same as does the house, get bought by my client or not. But it's like there's a different kind of stakes to it that can evoke some of what happens, and then in the debriefing of it, there can be that element as well to explore. So
I
maybe
have all
something to
kinds of
try.
ideas from everything you've discussed. I mean, I have
Oh, good.
a way of setting this up in my head that I think we could certainly talk through.
Yeah.
If people like what they've heard today, what's a way that they could, whether they volunteer it in their community, or they just maybe want to bring in an expert into their environment, what are some ways that they can learn more about the Boston Debate League and the work that you guys are doing?
Yes. Well, they can always go to our website, bostondebate.org. And there's connections to every, every different way they can get involved. if they want to volunteer, we always need and cherish the volunteers at our debate tournaments, which run from October through March. But it's not too early to sign up now for the fall and for the upcoming season. You don't have to have any background in debate or in the debate topic of the year. There's a training and there's support, and a lot of people who come volunteer, they come back and become just members of the community as well. So there's a place on the website where you can volunteer. If there are educators who are listening, or even professionals in the real estate industry who are also educators, actually, right? We are having a 2-day debate-inspired educator institute. We would love for anyone to come. That's August 18th and 19th. You can also find out information from that on our website. And that's a chance. There may be some, and Jason, you're welcome as well. You may be running your own thing then. But people from across different industries that are leading professional development, leading groups of learners in different ways might benefit from that. So it's a sort of a conference style workshop, which is always really vibrant and excellent. And if there's any folks who have middle school age kids in the Boston area, we have a debate camp, which runs the first 2 weeks of August. So that's also information on our website.
Which is a buyer
and
beware sort of thing. Like your kids will come back even more well equipped to debate you on all
Yes.
fronts. So if you sign your kids up for that, make sure you go to the educator debate learning session as well.
Yes, exactly. So you're prepared as well.
So that you
So-
can fight fire with fire. Marisa, thank you
Exactly.
very much for joining me on this and having this conversation. I hope people listening do take the chance to learn a little bit about the Boston Debate League. It's a really cool organization. I'm going to have a few members on over the course of this series that we're doing for this podcast to talk about a few of the debates that you guys have actually been having, including a really cool setup that you guys have done with, I think, that third leg that you mentioned at the opening, where we talk about some of the barbershop debates that we've been having on housing wealth and generational wealth and equity and how that works,
Thanks.
and some of the changes that have been going on over the past really decades, but specifically even within the last few years and how that's changed. It's a debate that I've been having with a lot of my friends, and I can't wait to hear the perspective of the Boston Debate League. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise, and I can't wait to get into some of the topics over the course of the weeks.
Likewise, Jason, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And yes, look forward to continuing the connection.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Finance with Factor. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Then if you really like us, open another podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or really wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Search Finance with Factor and do it again. The more places you like, share, and follow helps our ratings. But that can be our little secret. Have a question about today's episode or an idea for an upcoming episode? Post a comment. For more content, follow Jason Factor on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Finance with Factor. All content discussed on Finance with Factor is self-published by Jason Factor, Senior Loan Officer, NMLS number 1401985. All rates, guidelines, and advice shared on this episode is subject to change. To contact Jason directly or for a full set of disclosures, visit his website at jasonfactor.com.
Jason Factor, NMLS number 1401985. Movement Mortgage supports equal housing opportunity. NMLS number 39179. NMLS, consumeraccess.org.